The Disciplinary Battalion of the North Caucasus Military District is a special place within the armed forces. Formally, it is not considered a zone or a prison, but in essence it is a place of deprivation of liberty for military personnel convicted by military tribunals. Life here takes place behind high fences and barbed wire. The Disciplinary Battalion is a military unit, but with special rules. Even the Army's customary form of address, comrade, is prohibited inside, and the rules emphasize the humiliating status of the convicts. Insignia and epaulets are worn on the sleeve rather than the shoulder, like a mark that immediately distinguishes a disbat from the rest. New convicts arrive here every week. Most of them are sent from units of the Ministry of Defense. Paratroopers occupy a special place, as they are most often convicted of hazing and non-statutory relations. Among the convicts are representatives of the aviation and construction battalions. They end up in the disciplinary battalion, as a rule, for fighting and hooliganism. Infantrymen are most often punished for desertion, and military academy cadets often end up here for robbery or looting. The maximum term of imprisonment in the disciplinary battalion is 2 years, which is, of course, less than in a colony, but given the severity of the regime, these 2 years can seem like an eternity. Each new arrival begins their journey in the so-called quarantine ward. This is a period of adaptation, a kind of test of strength, when soldiers are taught new rules and strict discipline. Here, no one pays attention to past merits, ranks, or position in the military hierarchy. Yesterday's combat training ace, platoon commander, or athlete, all of that loses its meaning. From this moment on, every newcomer is simply called Zero and goes through the system of breaking down again. The regime in the disciplinary battalion is extremely strict. Roll call is held every hour, and every day is filled with exhausting work. Labor here is seen as the main means of education. Some are assigned to chop wood or collect boxes for vegetables, some unload railroad cars, and some cut trees in the neighboring military forestry. The standards are set unrealistically high. For example, a soldier must cut down 100 trees in a day. If you don't meet the quota, you will be punished. Thus, every day turns into a series of physical exhaustion and psychological pressure. It is noteworthy that even after being sent to the disciplinary battalion, servicemen do not lose their combat awards and ranks if they were received earlier. Sometimes it happens that awards catch up with soldiers here, within the walls of the disciplinary battalion. There are paradoxical situations. Yesterday a person committed an offense for which he ended up behind barbed wire, and today his past merits remind him of themselves. For example, there was a case in the disciplinary battalion when a convict named Kutuzov, who had participated in combat operations in Chechnya, received a government award, the Suvorov Medal. It seemed strange and even bitter. A hero, honored with a high award, is serving his sentence alongside those who ended up here for fighting, drunkenness, or hazing. But the army is cruel and ironic. Awards come through departmental channels, and they do not always coincide with the moment when a person is worthy of honor. In their former lives, all these people wore different uniforms: paratroopers, tankers, signalmen, infantrymen, sailors. Each had their own insignia, their own traditions, their own little prides. But here, in order to equalize all convicts and distinguish them from the guards, they are dressed in identical gymnastics uniforms and old-style boots. It is a kind of uniform, for the punished, that erases individuality. In the past, there were at least 6 different sets of uniforms in the army. Everyday camouflage, dress uniforms, police uniforms for those who stood guard at the mausoleum, and work uniforms. In the disciplinary battalion, everything is simplified. 1 or 2 varieties, no liberties or differences. There is no right to a beautiful uniform here, only harsh uniformity. Alexei Mazhorskaya ended up in the disciplinary battalion from the presidential regiment, where he served in the honor guard company in the Kremlin. His military bearing was so polished that in the first days after his arrival, the officers of the disciplinary battalion came out specifically to watch him march. He marched as he would on Red Square, precisely, rhythmically, with perfect posture. It seemed that just yesterday he was gracing state ceremonies. and today he was marching on the parade ground of the disciplinary battalion among other nobodies. This contrast was particularly painful for Mazhorsk himself. From a symbol of military pride, he had become a prisoner, albeit one with army epaulets. Vladimir Gushchin, another convict, was a large, healthy guy from Kiev with leadership qualities. But before he had a chance to prove himself, he was arrested for violating the charter and sent to the disciplinary battalion. Here, he was no longer a big Kiev authority. Everyone is equal before the law, and any past significance loses its power. Life in the disciplinary battalion is based on constant control. There are no trifles here. The slightest violation of the rules or disobedience can land you in the guardhouse, a military prison attached to the battalion. Here, in the disciplinary battalion, the guba is a kind of prison within a prison. It is considered the most severe form of punishment within the unit. A solitary confinement cell, bare walls, strict discipline. A soldier can be sent there for up to 30 days for any serious violation. This is yet another level of pressure on a person, because the disciplinary battalion itself already restricts freedom, and the guba turns every day into a test of endurance. There are no comrades nearby, no opportunity to distract oneself with work or communication. Only silence, walls, and one's own thoughts remain. Many admit that it is solitary confinement that breaks them the most. Convicts who have arrived from Chechnya adapt here more easily than others. They have already gone through the harsh trials of combat and know how to control themselves. It is easier for them to cope with the pressure. They perceive everything as just another assignment. You came here, so serve as you served before, they reason. For them, disciplinary battalion is not a disaster, but another stage that must be passed. They do not dramatize, do not complain about every restriction, but simply do what is required of them. In the barracks, you can find surprising neighbors, combatants and ethnic Chechens, who in other circumstances might be on opposite sides of the barricades. But here, inside the barbed wire fence, everything is different. People are forced to coexist and help each other. Mutual resentment and hostility give way to camaraderie. One soldier said, "I even have a Chechen friend here. We fought in Chechnya, but now everything is fine. We support each other because we are all in the same situation here." The diversity of nationalities and religions is also evident. For example, Muslims admit that it is difficult to pray in the detention center. There is too little free time and the schedule is too strict. But many try to observe at least the internal rules of their faith. At the same time, there are simple human joys. Guys from Ukraine share salo, joke, treat others, and this becomes a small respite in their difficult service. One such case was recalled. "At first I didn't want to try it, but then the guys insisted. I tried it, it was delicious, thank you, it was nice." It is in such small things that true army friendship is born. At first glance, it seems that the whole point of the disciplinary battalion is hard work, unloading wagons, planting trees, chopping wood. But in fact, it is not only and not so much about work. Strangely enough, sometimes you have to work harder in the woodcutting unit than in a regular military unit. First, the term of service here is extended, and every day becomes especially difficult. Second, there is constant drill, following the regulations down to the last detail, down to the very last comma. But the hardest thing for many is not this, but the fact that there are no real army activities here. No shooting, parachute jumping, driving vehicles, or training exercises. Instead, they have to spend whole days hammering boxes, unloading wagons, or cutting trees under the supervision of a convoy. All this is psychologically more exhausting than normal army duties. Dmitry Nekrasov was one of these soldiers. His story is indicative. Drafted into the army in 1995, he served for a year and a half until an order came to send him to Chechnya. Dmitry refused. Not from military service in general. He emphasized that he was ready to remain in the army, but specifically from the war in Chechnya. He considered it unacceptable to shoot at people and participate in bloodshed. In his words, "I must not kill anyone, It is against my beliefs." This refusal changed his whole life. After that, Dmitri was on the run for 6 years. He was in hiding not because he wanted to avoid the army, but because difficult circumstances awaited him at home. His mother was disabled with a heart condition, and his father suffered from tuberculosis. The family lived on a small pension, and he was forced to help them as the breadwinner. He admits that he would have given up long ago and gone to trial if it weren't for his concern for his loved ones. When his parents' health stabilized, he decided to return and see it through to the end. Today, only volunteers are sent to Chechnya, and Dmitri understands that times have changed. He regrets that his life has taken this path and that he has missed out on a lot. Service in elite units, army training, and experience that could have been useful. At the same time, he acknowledges that even the disciplinary battalion has its own school of life. "I will still see some part of the army, work, and discipline here. I may have lost a lot, but I have gained something." It is important to understand that not all soldiers who end up in the disciplinary battalion are criminals in the usual sense. Yes, many committed crimes: desertion, fights, hazing, and sometimes theft or robbery. But there are also stories like Nekrasov's, where a person ends up in disgrace due to a combination of circumstances, personal beliefs, or family tragedies. They are all different. These are not strangers. They are our children, ordinary guys, each with their own destiny.